When we look at the human spectrum and the course of human lives, very few things are consistent amongst person to person. But one of those things that are consistent is that we're going to experience change. And whether you embrace change or fear it, it's going to happen. And sometimes it's even shoved down our throats, like right now during the campaign season. So why do politicians and many of us experience such intense feelings with change? To kind of understand that, I want to take you back to my service trip in Africa in the summer of 2014. We went to the island of Zanzibar in the country of Tanzania, where we worked on some educational projects. We were tutoring students in English, science, mathematics, as well as even computer science. I mean, we got to really work with these students on a whole different level of educational issues. We also even got to help them with some infrastructure projects. We were building a library as well as a school in their own community, so that way they didn't have to travel many miles to get to one in a different community. And in the meantime, we even had a lot of fun. And this is my sad attempt of dancing with my favorite hat on as well. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. What was unsettling about this to me was, while I was in Africa, I felt this intense purpose. I woke up every day, and even though I knew I was going to have to tutor for about 8 hours and then continue to work construction projects, I was ready to go. I'd never felt more happy in my life. And on the last night of the trip, our guide told us kind of a sad story, and it was basically that volunteers, when they go home, they lose this. And that was very unsettling to me. Even though I knew I was young and I could volunteer again, I don't have ample amounts of money and time to go to countries such as Tanzania. And to me, it seemed like she was trying to make a statement about service. And I couldn't quite grab my hands around it, so I decided to relate it in science terms, because I'm a biochemistry major and that's the best way I can relate to things. So I was coming back to this idea of the central dogma, which basically explains why life exists. And that is, DNA makes RNA makes proteins. And if you don't understand that, it's all right. What we just have to understand is that it's a simple 3-step process. And so I tried to relate that to what our guide was saying, and basically what I found was she was trying to explain that service requires spending lots of money and going on long trips. And that was rather unsettling to me. So when I went home, I set a goal of mine, and that was to try and redefine this central dogma of service and find a way that we could use that to make us feel that sense of purpose every day in our lives. And what I came to realize was that reflection drives service, which drives that feeling of purpose. And I ultimately came to a 3-step process in how we can get to accomplishing this central dogma. But before I get to that, I want to talk to you about why. Why should I go above and beyond of what I'm expected to do? Just because you're not breaking the law doesn't mean you're doing a service to someone. Service is going above and beyond what's expected and doing something outstanding. And the reason you should do that is basically rooted in psychology. If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it explains how we can live a life of purpose, a life of well-being, so that way on our final day, we can say, I have done what's needed to be done. And for the sake of today's speech, we can just assume that our physiological needs and safety, which are the first two, have been met. Because we can't really achieve the self-actualization, the final pillar, until the bottom ones have been met. So if we assume the first two are completed, that leads us to step 3, which is love and belonging. And if we're serving others, we're showing them that we care. We're showing them those feelings of love and belonging, and if they are thankful enough to give us recognition, we can feel that in return. And we can begin to move up on that hierarchy. And then if we look at esteem, it says, lead a life of honor and recognition. And like I said, not every act of service comes with recognition, but what's more honorable than to lead a life of service? So there is a psychological aspect of this that we need to serve others to help us feel this sort of purpose. Plus, we have a need for it. I saw it in Africa when these students didn't have enough food to eat every day, and they didn't have good access to education. But the reality is that same scenario occurs here in our communities. There are students that don't have access to public education. There are students that go home hungry. And if we look at even the grand scheme of things, there's more problems, such as suicide is the second most common rate amongst teenagers. And suicide is 100% preventable. So we have these issues that we could be addressing, but maybe we're just not quite putting the time into doing so. So now let's get into the how, because it might seem to address such issues as that, we might need a lot of time and money in order to achieve those such as services. But I promise you, this 3-step process that I messaged is achievable. I mean, I'm a college student, so budgeting is what I do. Ramen diet's amazing. I encourage you to try it. So it is possible. I promise you it's possible. And here's how it's going to work. Step 1, I need you to reflect. And I don't care what time during the day you do this. I choose to do this right before I go to bed. Before I close my eyes, I sit down and I make a list of every good thing that happened to me that day. And I don't short out anyone, whether they just opened the door for me or gave me a nice smile. I put them on that list because that's the fuel that I'm going to need. It's what's going to drive me to want to return that to someone else. So step 1, reflect. Step 2 is plan. Right after that, make a second list. In this one, I want you to list of every good thing you could do for someone else. Again, don't short it. It could be something really big, such as a service trip, or it could be something small, like maybe calling your parents on your way to work instead of just listening to the radio. Or maybe asking your friend, how are they, and not settling for just okay. But make that list. This is a list of opportunities, a list of possibilities that you could do to make an impact in someone else's life. And then third step is achieve. Pick one of those things, or 2, or if you really want to get crazy, pick 3 of them, and make it happen the very next day. Do not wait. You've already proven to yourself that people have done it for you in that first step. You've already shown the second step that you can make it happen, so don't wait. Make a plan to achieve it and make it happen. And I promise you, this does work. I see it in my friends and in my family. I see it when I have an idea, such as giving a TED Talk, and they listen to me give these proposals and these speeches. They take the time out of their day to help me. I see it when they drive multiple hours to come to my TED Talk. But the problem is, so many of us just stop right there at our family and friends. And we miss out on opportunities every day to serve someone else. It could be someone that's walking to class that drops their books. We just pass by because we think we don't have time. But we do. It's such a small addition. The thing about Africa was that I learned that ignorance was blissful. When I didn't go to Africa, I didn't know about the problems there. I could read about it and I could see pictures, but I didn't really fully understand it. And it's true, ignorance is bliss. But now I just told you that you do need to serve people. You have a psychological need to do it. I showed you how you can get it done. I showed you that there is a need to do it. So we are no longer ignorant to the ability we have to change the lives around us. So what are we waiting for? Thank you.